This video is going to give an introduction to the midterm or the final that's part one and answer some questions that you might have. So the first part is thinking about how to study. So make sure you have the midterm prompt as well as your article outlines. So the prompt looks something, let's see if I can pull that up. So this is the midterm prompt, and it is available on Blackboard, and you can see that it includes the questions where you have to write about the controversial topic. So that means that you're summarizing the controversial topic, bringing in Slavo, Shepard, and Copland in this case. So that means don't summarize the articles. You do not have to directly attribute the ideas, but you do need to show that you understand the controversial issue. Why are people talking about it? Why is it important? What are people saying about it? What problems is it causing? How are people trying to fix it? Do some people say it's not even a problem? So these are the different facets that I want you to describe. And it doesn't have to be super long. You can have probably like 4 to 6 sentences and describe it well. So that's something to remember about that. Then the next part is you're going to look at the different articles, and you're going to, you might be studying for, and look at the main claim. Make sure you know the main claim. Make sure you know the arguments, and then you can cite evidence. So you'll have a copy of the article with you, so you don't need to memorize it, but it's going to help if you can find it quickly, or if you do memorize it, if you remember it from the many times that you've read it, that's even better, because that means you'll go quickly. You won't have to spend time reading the text, but it's not a bad idea to double check. So if you have those items, you'll be ready to study. And I'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of how to study for the exam, how to answer the questions, and what material is that, or how to read the articles and understand them better later. So some overviews are, I want you to think about before the exam, make sure you study. Don't just show up and hope that you can read the prompt and write something. It might work out, but probably it's going to be difficult to do well if you're not studying. Buy a large blue book at the bookstore. So that means that everyone has the same kind of blue book. They're less than $1. You can buy them there. And then make sure you have something to write with. So you can bring a pen or a pencil, whatever you're most comfortable with. Just make sure that you can write legibly with it, you're comfortable with it. And I encourage you to bring backups and bring erasers, bring your own pencil sharpener, bring the supplies that you're going to need so that if something bad happens to the first thing you have to write with, the first pencil, the first pen you have to write with, you have something else that you can go with. So thinking about the format of the exam, one thing is and I'm not looking specifically at not at the first part where you have to summarize the issue, but looking at the next part, the majority, the bulk of the exam. What you're doing is you're giving the main claim that is from the articles that we've been studying. So one of these articles, you're going to have to give the main claim, and then you're going to give probably 3 arguments. These in the prompt are called main points, but remember the arguments on the outlines that I've been giving you. These arguments or main points are going to be the main things that the authors are trying to use to support their overall idea. And then don't forget to support it with evidence. You're going to have to pick out specific examples and explain why it's important and does support the argument that the author has given and help support their main claim. So that's a little overview there of how you're going to, oops, wrong thing. So if you look at the prompt, the midterm prompt, you have the two bullet points in the middle are going to be a bulk of your writing. The beginning, the introduction is important. The last part where you say whether or not it's effective is important. But the bulk of your writing where you're really going to demonstrate what you know are the middle 2 bullet points. So, and the middle 2 bullet points are all represented in this diagram right here. All right, so that said, so that can kind of get you started with the studying in a general sense. I'll talk about the specifics later or in another video. First things first, so when you come into class on the day of the exam, I'm going to be there early, so what you can do is you can come see me. I'll inspect the blue book, and then I'll make sure that it's fine, and then I'll give it back to you, make sure there's no notes in it. Once you get that, then you can begin the exam. So it's in your best interest. Come as early as possible. Give your blue book to me, and that way I can make sure you're fine. One of the first steps you can take is that you can brainstorm an outline before the exam. My request is that you do this in the final pages of the blue book, so that way there's no confusion about whether or not your like outlines or whatever are your writing, and then start the actual exam on the first page of the book. If you start to do your outline on the first page of the book, don't worry about it, just keep going, but if possible, I'd really prefer if you can do the outlining, brainstorming, little notes or whatever you're going to do at the end of the book, so that when you go to write, your writing starts on the first page of the book. I can open your blue book and start correcting. Some things to take into consideration about formatting and language. So I will not be very strictly grading for grammar, spelling, or APA citations. Those are areas where when you have access to grammar books, you have access to dictionaries, you have access to other resources, I am holding you accountable. But here, you are not going to have access to those resources. So I'm not holding you accountable for these, except if I can't understand your ideas, if your spelling or your grammar is so bad that I can't understand it, then I will be taking away points for that. Formatting. One thing to keep in mind is you need to be writing full sentences and in a paragraph format. Do not write a list, do not write notes. If you do that, even if you directly respond to the prompt and you're giving the information that I'm looking for, you will not get points. So you're having a great opportunity at this point to understand the ideas before you go into the exam. You have so many opportunities to understand the ideas. So what this is grading your writing. This is grading how well can you sit down at a blue book and write something. So, not necessarily thinking about grammar and spelling, but how well can you connect ideas. So even if your ideas are 100% correct, that is not going to matter if you do not have full sentences that are connected and ideas that are well developed. So remember that, because this is not how well do you remember the article, though that is a part of it. It's how well can you present the ideas from the article. Another thing, remember when you're writing, skip lines. It's so much easier for me to give feedback. If you want, you can proofread and edit, so I encourage that, but just make sure that whatever edits or proofreading you're making, that it's easy to read, so that don't make a bunch of complicated arrows or weird symbols or things like that I might have a hard time understanding. Also connected to that idea, if you write a paragraph and you realize like, oops, I don't want that in there, you can just cross it out. Feel free again to edit. Just make sure it's easy to read. Don't say like turn to page 5 to read the paragraph that comes next. So just make sure that it's easy for me to read, and that if you have to cross things out, do so clearly and fully. Don't. I'd encourage you to do it like, not super dark, but just, make sure like not just one thin line, but 3 or 4 lines or something like that. All right. So if something happens where you have a question during the exam, you are welcome to ask questions. Keep in mind that we can answer questions where we can clarify instructions, we can phrase directions in a different way. Those are definitely questions we can answer. Some of the questions that we will not be able to help you with is to tell you whether something is a good answer. So if you want to ask us, or if you want us to give information about the articles, we cannot do that. That is part of what you're studying for before the exam. We also can't help with grammar or spelling. So that means if you raise your hand and ask us to look at a sentence and have us tell you whether or not you have written the sentence well, with the grammar, the punctuation, if it makes sense, we can't tell you that. That is part of the test. That is not something. That's not a resource that's available to you while you're taking the midterm. So, something to keep in mind. While there are a lot of restrictions around this exam, there are some things that you should be thinking about whether or not you want to bring. First, you can bring a paper dictionary if you'd like. And of course, please bring your pen, a pencil, erasers, sharpener. So I already mentioned that, but please just make sure you have enough so that if your pen runs out of ink or your pencil breaks or you can't find your eraser, you have some extra materials so that you're definitely able to write and complete the exam. Some things you cannot use on the exam. So there's no cell phones or any other electronic devices. You cannot bring notes. You cannot have things written on your hand. These are all things that you may not use. Turn your phone on silent. Please just turn it on silent. So if you're on your phone, we assume that you're cheating. So that will have consequences, which I'll get into in a little bit. So that means, turn your phone off so you don't have to turn your phone on silent, turn it off, so we don't have to come by and try and figure out what was happening because you forgot to turn your phone on silent and you got a phone call. Do you have to pick up the phone? Maybe you're expecting an important phone call or something like that. Please tell whoever you're expecting a phone call or a text or an email from that you have a midterm. Explain your situation and hopefully they'll understand. If you just cannot avoid it, you have to pick up the phone for some reason, talk to me and make sure I'll be okay with that, because it may just be that because if you get up and leave the room and you're talking on the phone, I'm picking up your midterm, you're done. So, connected to that, I want to talk about cheating on exams. So cheating on the exam is not allowed. So there are specific rules in place where anyone caught cheating on the exam, some consequences might be receiving a 0 on the exam without the chance for a makeup exam. So, and also, I am required to report you for academic dishonesty to the Center for Student Rights and Responsibilities. So this is if you have questions about it, you can go to their webpage and read more about it. You can talk to me, but this is something that I am required to do if there is an instance of academic dishonesty. So part of that is connected to the idea that because if a student has bad habits or they're shown to be academically dishonest in my class, they do it once and that's it, it may look fine to me. But it's important to report the student, because then if a student is doing that in other classes, what that means is they want to be able to talk to the student so that if it comes up again, they know how to discipline the student and how to deal with the student. So that's one of the big reasons why I have to report it, and there are other reasons as well. Examples of cheating include, but are not limited to, the following. So using your phone in any way during the exam, either inside or outside of the classroom. So that means sending a Facebook message to your friend. That means taking a phone call from your mom. These are all instances you cannot use your phone before or after the exam. You can use it before or after. You can't use it during the exam. Sorry, I misspoke there. No talking or whispering to a classmate during the exam, unless you need a pencil. But if that's the case, raise your hand and I'll help you out with that. So looking at a classmate's answers. So even though this is writing, it's long writing, it's less likely that you just need to steal a single bit of information. Don't look at your classmates' exams. See what they're writing. You may not take your blue book out of the classroom during the exam. If you have to go to the bathroom, which I encourage you, go to the bathroom before class. Don't drink too much. Drink just enough coffee to get you caffeinated. If you have to go to the bathroom during the exam, you must leave your blue book in the classroom. You may not take it with you. Just leave it, close it, leave it in the classroom while you're going to the bathroom. You may not bring in a blue book that has writing in it. And I'm going to work to ensure that that doesn't happen, because I'm going to look through and inspect the blue books and make sure they don't have any writing in it. You may not use any notes, any written on your hand and on pieces of paper, anything like that. You are only allowed to use the papers that I'm giving you, and that's going to include the prompt as well as the article. You can make notes all you want to on the prompt as well as on the article. You can write all over that thing. You'll turn those in with your blue book at the end of class, but you can't have any other notes. If you go and use the restroom and you're found to be retrieving materials, talking to someone, or using your phone to help you with the answers, that is also considered cheating, and the exam will end for you at that point. So that is midterm. That's the midterm and the final for part one. So at least for part one. So I hope that gives you a better idea of what to expect on the exam. You can ask me questions if you have them, but this is just giving you a little bit of an overview so you know what to expect. Thanks so much, and good luck studying.